Welcome to this Adapted to AT short podcast. This one we are focusing on the concept of solution aversion. And this came from a podcast by Adam Grant. His podcast is called Rethinking or Work Life. It's the same podcast, so just under two different names. So if you wanted to check him out, highly recommend it. So many of these ideas come from him. He's an organizational psychologist and just a brilliant thinker and teacher into ways that he communicates this. But the idea of solution aversion, and we'll quote and kind of bring up this kind of definition here, is it's the reality that we all deny the existence of problems for which we do not like the solutions. So if there's a problem that is too difficult or complex, we tend to just disregard the problem as much as we can, even if there is research to back up some of the solutions that are offered or some of the ideas that are offered. Again, if we don't like it and we can avoid it, that tends to be what we do. And so applying this to athletic training, talking about treatment, care, rehab, everything there is, what if the solution goes against what you prefer doing? Do you write off a certain treatment or care option because you just don't like it, you don't agree with it? The evidence could be shoddy at best, or if there is any at all, could be a fad that somebody's requesting. But what if that is the solution in a particular case? Does your reason behind it, making sure that obviously ethical is a big caveat here, you got to keep that in mind, is it really going to make the difference in the long run? This is a tough one and a slippery slope, and really we could go all around full circle with the evidence-based tripod or the continuum, however you want to define that, but playing into both the the practitioner's experience / expertise, the best available research, and then the patient's desires, needs, and beliefs as well. If you're taking all those into account, if the patient believes X may fix them, if there is not a physiological or ethical reason to not do that, are you overlooking it or potentially not going to it because you don't necessarily agree with it? One, cupping comes to mind, kinesiology taping comes to mind, where there's some strong opinions, both sides of it. There's a lot of fads with both of those. But if that's going to be what that individual patient needs in order to get there, are we just averting the solution because we really just have a strongly held belief against it? Something to consider. Obviously, that could go too far where now you're not using those other realms, your expertise, best available research, and it's just appeasing people, and that could present its own problem. Work and the quantity of work, the demands of work. What if that solution is a hard conversation? Not fun, but will just disregarding the problem or pushing it away or finding ways to justify it or make it work continue to grow into a larger issue. Ours is really, and changing of events and the different things that can impact that can be a solution of having a hard ask, but sometimes those hard conversations, those awkward conversations will set it up for a better future. Personal experience, this was a harsh, I want it, and still to a degree you want to be everything to everybody all the time. You showed your dedication by the hours you put in, the amount of you were there for someone. But once some of those hard conversations happened, some things switched and ours got better and we were able to adapt to things. Things ultimately got better. It was a better situation for the athletic training staff, as we just were better when we were there because we were able to control a little bit of what our hours were. So everything just felt easier, if you will. Because you weren't just there putting in quote-unquote junk hours to just be there to be there, and so that brought some new life to it. A lot of times the student athletes actually preferred some of the changes because it wasn't random off times, and this is all situational dependent. I get there's some significant limitations in the secondary setting of when and how you can see patients just because of the class, but the collegiate setting, offers a little bit more freedom there to a degree. But those conversations suck, for lack of a better description, but they can set you up for a lot better long-term and sustainable work type setting if you have those. What about interprofessional collaboration? What if the solution is initiating the conversation? Egos can run rampant on both sides of that conversation, but it takes someone being willing to start the conversation to figure out where it can go and if it can lead to something better. What if the solution is there's enough for everyone? We just got to go out there and find it. There's a lot of back and forth on social media. Things come up, PTs, ATs, all of that plays in. You throw chiropractors in the mix and any real other health profession, strength and conditioning coaches. Personally, I truly believe there's an abundance of people that need the services of everyone, and there's not going to be a shortage of that. Situationally, sure, that could come up. But generally speaking, no, there's enough people out there that have needs for these different practitioners that we don't need the infighting. But that being said, as we're going back and forth and we see a lot of the public discourse going back and forth, people upset, be the one to reach out and initiate that conversation and maybe make it better. And it doesn't have to be public. But what if that is the solution and taking the ownership of doing that? It's an awkward one, but are we averting a solution by just going back and forth in a public forum and not actually addressing it in some place that could actually get solved? Which leads right into kind of AT, Twitter, social media. If you're not on it, it can get very interesting at times. So what if the solution is just not engaging in a tweet that won't be productive? It seems like a lot of times it is just this constant build on everyone on top of everyone because you can get some likes for it, or you just know that it's going to set somebody off. What if just you took a step back and you didn't say the slight, and you helped put the fire out before it turned into one, because you're taking away fuel that doesn't truly need to be there? Are we truly solving anything through some of these, or are we just averting the actual solution? And if there's instances, I'd love to hear them, but I don't know that there's a lot where, if we tweet out at coaches, patients, you may see some of these, you may have more followers in that regard than I ever have or will, but a lot of it seems to be ATs just reaffirming each other, which is not necessarily a bad thing. But are we actually changing any minds? Are we getting to the people that we need to change minds, or are we just getting a lot of confirmation bias by other people around us agreeing with us? Which, again, it's nice to know we have that support, absolutely 100%. But truly, are we solving anything through Twitter/X versus organizing in a different way, or taking that initiative to really address things on those local-ish levels and finding support to help each other do that? It can be hard to do hard things, including finding solutions. I've ignored a lot of things in the past, ideas, suggestions, whatever they may be, that finally I came around to, and that ended up being the best answer. And you regret that in hindsight. And so ultimately that is what I'm hoping people will take into consideration here is, if you find yourself pushing a problem away because you don't like the solution, it's time to take a harder look at that problem and why you don't like that solution. And if it's truly a justifiable reason, it very well could be, absolutely. But take a few steps back, take some time with it. There's an old adage with relationships, never go to bed angry. I would argue never send a tweet or some of that stuff angry, or that email angry, because potentially you're going to not have the solution you want. So take those steps back, look at the solution, look at different ideas, try and think about how it would resolve something that could be resolved. Again, if you keep averting what's going on, that's probably means it's something that needs to be addressed. So look at that extra work, thinking outside the box. It can help prevent more work in the future. Don't be averse to a solution just because it's something that you're not comfortable with, because it's not necessarily in your wheelhouse. Not saying it has to always be that way, but I think we'll save ourselves a lot of headache and problems if we're at least open to checking those out. So that is the Adapted to AT on solution aversion. Again, came from Adam Grant's Rethinking podcast. Highly recommend checking that out. And we'll be out later this week with a new episode featuring Rachel Deal. So check that out. Appreciate everybody taking a listen. If you got ideas or other things with this, or want to talk about any of these things, would love to hear from you. Please just shoot us a message and we will figure out how to make that happen. But until next time, thank you for listening.